Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Soul Goals Podcast. I'm Dawn, and I'm so glad you're joining me today. This podcast is dedicated to bringing people's stories to light and hearing their journeys of inspiration and self-growth. But it's also about connection and knowing that you are not alone. Each week, I get the chance to sit down and talk with an amazing soul, someone I've had the blessing of either meeting or following in my life. I am so grateful for my guests. Their openness and their vulnerability, it is unmatched as we share heartfelt conversations together about both their challenges and their triumphs. I hope that you can grab some inspiration and connection from my guests and their stories. I know I certainly have with each conversation. What an honor to sit with these brave souls. Everyone has a story, folks. And every story matters. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Soul Goals. My name is Dawn. I'm so thankful for my guest today, Nick Eichenberger, hailing all the way from Georgia, just east of Atlanta. We just talked about that, but originally from Kansas City, Mo, not Kansas City, Kansas City, Mo, right? Nick is a senior and he's a volleyball player at Emmanuel University. He's not only just a senior, he's the team captain. He was the libero on the team. And interestingly enough, when he goes to graduate, he is the class valedictorian. So this man is one of the up and coming smart people in our world to lead and to ignite passion in people. I know this because I connected with Nick via his Instagram reel just probably about a few weeks ago, actually, when he posted about a fundraising tournament that he and his team were having at their college just a few weeks ago. And it is in regards to his brother's passing to the silent epidemic, suicide. And what Nick did in his reel, besides just promoting this wonderful cause that he and his team were doing, was to give some really vulnerable information about his brother, about his life, and about how that worked within his family unit and how they all worked through that and are still working through that with his healing process. So I asked Nick, hey, would you be okay with being on the show? Because I really feel like this topic is something that is super important to be talked about. It's not something that by talking about it brings it on. It's talking about it is very deliberate, and it brings awareness and understanding for people that may be struggling, as well as families and friends that may be walking alongside someone that is struggling. So I am thankful for my guest today, Nick Eichenberger. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, of course. I love being here.
Well, I'm so glad you are. And like I said, you're real. You were saying you're like, it actually went viral and you weren't expecting that. So we'll link all that when we go through this and release it too, because it's so heartfelt. I was really drawn to your story because of that vulnerability that you expressed. You talked about your brother's passing, and gosh, what a pillar he was in your life. And this all happened less than a year ago for you as well, in October of
6 months.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your brother and what kind of person was he? What did he mean to you in your life? A little bit more about
his name was Casey. He was an awesome guy. He was super smart, like tested higher than pretty much everybody in his class on everything.
Okay.
Very funny. He would memorize these like comedy skits and like put them on for me and my family, and just like really witty with a lot of his like comments on stuff. He had the ability to make people laugh like nobody I really know. And he was a great person. He just, he loved others and he was loved by others. He just couldn't love himself.
Yeah. How long do you remember him being in that place of not being able to love himself?
Yeah. So growing up, we knew he had like something. We didn't know what it was. There was a misdiagnosis of autism when he was fairly little.
Okay.
he was not autistic, and
Yeah.
we handled it like he was, and he wasn't. I think
Mhm.
he ended up, he definitely was bipolar, a
Yeah.
little bit of social anxiety disorder, um, and we were handling it as autism, and we didn't really know kind of what to do. But growing up is fairly normal childhood. I mean, I obviously, me being a kid, I didn't really get to see a whole lot of what was necessarily like wrong,
Right.
but I mean, we knew that it wasn't normal.
Right.
We'd go on trips to Disney World or whatever, and we knew that one of the days that we were on that trip was going to be a day where we couldn't do anything because Casey was going to break down.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Okay.
so we would always have, one day scheduled where it was like, and we never knew which day it was, but we'd always have one day where we know that today we're not going to be able to do anything because Casey's going to need a day to kind of reset, to readjust to
Mhm.
the newness of it. And like one-on-one conversations growing up, like, as I said, very smart, very intelligent. Nobody could tell that really anything was wrong. It was as soon as he was kind of put into a group of people that he kind of struggled to maintain conversation, to
Mhm.
understand like what a social norm was.
Okay.
I think it kind of just messed with him as he continued to get older. He
Yeah.
just continued to struggle with that. So
Do you feel like he maybe, if you look back at it, like he felt like he was being pigeonholed into this is who I am and this has got to be my identity?
um I don't know. I think he wanted to have relationships with lots of people. I just think he struggled, being able to do that. I don't think that he really, like, I know he understood kind of what he had and where he struggled. I just
Yeah.
think he didn't know how to really combat that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. As a family member outside of his experience, like how would you feel? Because I know another thing you shared in your reel was that he had attempted to take his own life numerous times.
yeah.
Um, and with the closeness of the two of you, because there was not very many years between the two of you, pretty close, correct?
Yeah, I mean, not even I was like a year and a half. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, growing up, like you were built in buddies, like built in
mhm,
friends. So,
yeah.
tell me a little bit about your feeling as you got older and you were watching all this happen and and you matured and you were able to understand what was going on with your brother a little bit more within the mental health struggles that he was experiencing. What were some of your feelings and your experiences when he would attempt to take his life?
Yeah, I mean, it's never easy, being in that position. And um the first time was really scary. It was November 2nd, 2020, so it was still when COVID was going on.
Yeah.
He took a bunch of pills and he told people right away. Like, he told our
Oh,
parents literally like 10 minutes after he did it. So we got into the
okay.
hospital super quick. Um, but I couldn't even go in because of COVID. They only
Oh
would
my
let
god.
one of my parents in at a time to the
Oh
hospital with
gosh.
him. And so I didn't really get to see any of that process. I'm sitting in the car for a few hours and I'm like, I
Mhm.
don't I don't know what to do. And over the next few days, he was still in the hospital. My parents would take turns of going up and stuff. But
Yeah.
it was not it was not like I had a whole lot of control in the situation.
Yeah.
And my parents were, I mean, rightfully so, kind of cautious about, who we're telling about
Right.
what's going on, because
Right.
that's not something you just go and start sharing with everybody.
Yeah.
It can cause, a lot of just problems within the family. Oh, why is he
Mhm.
doing this? What's going on? So parents
Yes.
are very cautious, rightfully so, in that.
Yeah.
But me being in that, I mean, I got to see it a few times, as I kind of said,
Yeah.
and getting to see it a few times and the doctor saying, "Oh, it's a miracle that he's still
Yeah.
alive." You just always assumed it was going to be a miracle until it's not. Um,
Right.
so that's
Mm.
I don't know if I answered the question. I
Yeah,
tried.
no, for sure, for sure. I think that it was what you said is extremely meaningful because it's a miracle until it's not,
Yeah.
you know? And interestingly enough, obviously you guys we were talking about you guys go on a trip and you're going to support your brother. Like you knew going in as a family, like when you go someplace, you talked about having to build in some time to kind of give him space and support when you would be gone. so obviously he had a ton of support within his family unit. What kind of support did he have outside of that? And was he able to get that kind of assistance that he needed, or have those kind of relationships? I know you said he struggled with that kind of thing. Were there anybody outside of his family unit that he could talk to or that he could rely on friend wise?
Yeah. So growing up, I mean, as I said, we kind of knew not everything was right.
Yeah.
So my parents were like, okay, let's get him into therapy because we're gonna do whatever we can to help.
Yes.
Casey did not like therapy. I mean, every single day that he was going to therapy, it was this huge meltdown. He didn't want to
Mhm.
talk. He had this idea of my parents are wasting money on me talking to somebody as
Oh.
almost as a like it's not worth it kind of thing. And that's what I've found to be a big problem with kind of suicide in general is the idea of I'm not worth the help that others can give.
Mhm.
And that was a lot of what Casey struggled with was his idea of self-worth. As I
Yeah.
said, he loved others, others loved him. He just couldn't find that in himself.
Yeah.
So therapy didn't work. And we were there as much as we could be. Like if he ever needed to talk, I knew I would put down anything that I was doing
Right.
to
Right.
be able to talk to him.
Yeah.
But he didn't always want to talk to us either. So he would find these relationships with girls.
Okay.
And in these relationships with girls, he would pour out his entire life to them. I'm like,
Mhm.
Casey, you're essentially asking these 16, 17, 18-year-old girls to
To
do
hold
what
the
a
information.
therapist is supposed to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
And that's not fair to them. And then whenever those relationships would end, he would then lose his ability to talk. And that was
Mhm.
usually when an attempt would happen, is when a breakup would happen. So
Yeah. Yeah, he would just go back into a hole, basically.
yeah.
Gosh, I'm so sorry. I know that I like what you said about that, the worth piece. It's such an integral piece for so many people, that worthiness, feeling like it's,
Mhm.
I'm worth getting help. I'm worth investing in myself in that capacity. I'm worth fighting for. Even though you have all these people surrounding you that are fighting for you and telling you that you're worthy, it's that buying into it yourself. How were you and your brother different in that way? Was that something you ever struggled with personally?
I mean, I think as far as like the average person goes, yeah. I mean, I had tendency to, I'd get depressed in the winters, the seasonal depression or whatever,
Sure.
where I'd feel alone or whatever. But a lot of that kind of also attributed to my parents were always so busy
Yeah.
dealing with Casey that I didn't want to add any stress on top of their life.
Understand.
But
Yeah.
I knew that if I needed to talk to somebody, sorry, that I had the ability to do that. And there were times where I would be able to reach out, "Hey mom, hey dad, like I need help." And I mean, I did. I went to therapy for I don't know, a few months
Mhm.
whenever I needed it. It was this guy, he was kind of a sports psychologist, which actually helped me in training
Yeah.
and stuff. But it was also like just being able to talk to him. Um, I never felt like I really got along well with people that were my age
Yeah.
um, because, well, number one, I played volleyball, which is a girls' sport in a
Right.
city where volleyball had not developed. So I had a hobby
Mhm.
that was different. And
Mhm.
if you have a hobby that's different in public middle school and high school, that's not usually a good thing.
Yeah. It
Um,
sets you apart. Yeah. Hmm.
yeah. And number two, like growing up, at our family gatherings, I'm usually not sitting at the kids' table. I'm sitting at the adult table. I was the oldest
Yeah.
of all of the cousins on my mom's side. So I usually just hung out with the adults and I was able to have adult conversation. And I think that's helped me as far as who I am today. But,
Right.
making or generating relationships in high school, that did not help me because
Right.
people wanted to be goofy and do all this stuff that it wasn't really for me. So
Yeah.
I didn't really associate with that. So I
Mm.
did have times where, I felt alone, but I also knew that I had people to reach out to if I needed that.
Right.
Having very close relationship with my parents. And then if I needed help in other ways, my parents were always so eager to find help for me. So
Yeah. It sounds like their investment in both yourself and your brother is just immense. Obviously, as a
mhm,
parent, you're going to do anything that you can to help your children to be the best people that they can, to grow into the best people that they can. And you'll go to the ends of the earth to do that. And it sounds like that's, that's your folks. So
mhm.
that's good for you for sure. Tell me a little bit about that therapy process for you and how vital that was for you when you needed it. Because I think a lot of the awareness comes from a fear of asking for help, a
Mhm.
fear of being in that place where you don't want to be. Like you talked about, you're in a quote girls sport, volleyball, in a
Mhm.
city that it hasn't really developed in, and
Mhm.
your relationships are tending to be with older people. So outside of your brother's experience, give me a little bit about what therapy and reaching out and how that sat with you in terms of your own experience.
Yeah. What I've learned over my 22 years of life is just the ability of having somebody to talk to is incredibly helpful. I,
Yeah.
in college, have gotten lucky, I guess, in the fact that I've only had a roommate for 1 semester, and it wasn't even my freshman year. It was
Oh, wow.
last semester. And that was my favorite semester that I've had in college.
It
Just
was
the
someone with
ability.
you.
Yeah, there's somebody
Yeah.
with me, and I don't enjoy being. I'm a very clean person. I know
Yeah.
my room probably doesn't look like it, but you can't see like as far as the college dorm goes, it's in good shape. My car is
Yeah.
in great shape. Like I take care of my stuff. So that was something that I was like, oh, this is not going to be fun having a roommate. But at
Mhm.
the end of the day, like having a roommate keeps you accountable. You have
Mhm.
somebody to talk to and spend time with at the end of the day.
Mhm.
And everybody always complains about, oh, having a roommate sucks. They're dirty or whatever, but
Right.
it's not that way. And if you're worried about not having the room to yourself, like me and my roommate had such different schedules that I had plenty of the time in my room to myself. I do think alone time is very valuable,
Right.
but there's also like you need to be able to have face to face conversation with people.
Yeah.
And the ability for me to do that when I was in high school with a therapist was incredibly important because, as I said, I didn't have a whole ton of friends in high
Yeah.
school. And the ones that I did have, I didn't really feel like, oh, you're a person that I should be going to,
Right. That I could
spilling
confide
out
in
all
you.
of, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I didn't feel like it was right for me to confide in them, number one,
Mhm.
because that's not their stress, or that's not their stress to be putting on them. And
Sure.
number two, they don't have the answers to be able to help me. Like
Yeah.
they don't have the ability to help me.
Right. Right.
Therapy, there was a guy who was great for me and gave me lots of answers on how I could choose to change and be able to help myself
Yeah.
in that. And then, as I said, only 1 semester having a roommate. Um, it's been the best. It was the best semester that I've had,
Yeah.
especially mentally, um, just because of the ability to have somebody to talk to. So
Yeah.
I highly recommend that to anyone seeking out college. I highly recommend finding a roommate. Now, your first roommate might be rough, but if as
Right.
you grow and you make friends, like if you can find somebody that you're okay with putting up with, like it's also incredibly beneficial to have that roommate. So,
Right. I think that's interesting. You talk about that alone time being very valuable, but that
mhm,
connection time is valuable too. And I know in your reel you spoke about your brother being alone before he took his life across the country from you and from your parents, and that right there you always knew was a hard place for him when he would be in that place in that spot.
mhm,
So I think thank you for sharing that line that both things have value. Being
yeah,
alone and being able to take that space that you need is valuable just as much as that connection that you talked about, extremely vital. How do you think over the years that your brother would be able to manage that? Was he always tended to want to be by himself, or did he search for relationships that outside of the ones you were talking about, where he felt like he had to pour himself out to them?
yeah. So he usually tried to be by himself.
Hmm.
Like we would go out for a walk. We'd walk our dogs or we'd go out to dinner. And as soon as Casey realized he had a choice on whether to go or not, he would usually not go.
Yeah.
He would spend time at home. He would play Xbox, kind of do whatever it was by himself.
Yeah.
And that I think that really hurt him as
Mhm.
he really started to grow up, because
Mhm.
I was getting all of these opportunities, dog walking, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm getting to talk with our neighbors and creating relationships with our neighbors. Going
Yeah.
out to dinner, I'm getting to see people that, live around town that I'm creating bonds and relationships with. By the time that he's 18 and, graduating from high school, he didn't really have that connection. He didn't know he wasn't building up the skills on
Mhm.
how to have a social like be able to be social with others.
Yeah.
And at that point, it's not even, oh, you have the choice to be at home or you have the choice to go out. It was, even if I go out, it's not going to work because I haven't built up all of these skills that it takes to conversate with others
Right.
or
Right. But
converse with
that's
others. I
that
said the wrong word.
well, we're creating that word because it fit for me. It fit. That's a very poignant response right there, Nick. I mean, like that makes so much sense. And I think too, if we look at the demographic of kids nowadays and that social piece, that being able to learn how to connect with people face to face and have a conversation without having a phone or a distraction in the middle of all of that and being comfortable exercising that muscle, if you will, and knowing how that works. And I also, you said something too about making a choice. You have to make a choice. You have to make a choice. How hard do you think that was for your brother to make a choice to step from that alone isolation space to being with other people? You just said that if he had a choice, he would usually stay behind.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, you probably encouraged him to, hey, come along because you know what that does for him. But I mean, did you see any point during his life where that was something that he was leaning into and working towards?
Yeah, I think he desired, like, I think he wanted to have relationships and be able to, converse with others. I think he desired that absolutely, and he wanted to be able to hang out, and he wanted to feel normal in in that sense.
Yeah.
I just think that by the time that he was interested in doing that, he had spent so much time by himself that he didn't know how to do that. And
Got it.
he was always very, very much worried about what does it look like on the, like, what do I look on the outside, what do I look like on the outside, what is everybody's perception of me, and I don't mean necessarily physical looks, I just mean like what is their perception of me in this
Yeah.
scenario, in this situation.
Yeah.
And by the time that, he'd spent a few years where he's just going and saying, no, 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 I'm not going to hang out, I'm not going to do this. By the time that he wanted to, it was like he didn't know how to.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's hard. That's so hard because then you're crossing that self-confidence. And then we can go back into that self-worth piece that you talked about a little while ago.
Mhm.
It's like I don't feel worthy because I don't feel confident in it and I don't really know what to do and I'm trying but I don't want it to look awkward and I don't want it to be weird and I don't worried about what everybody else thinks. And it's it's so easy for us, I think, here to sit and go, oh, it's okay. And it's all right to make mistakes. But when you're in that mindset of so much fear of doing something different and making that change, it is incredibly freezing to do anything different. And making that change is so challenging. And especially if somebody has had the challenges that he's had through his life for as long as you can remember, and the misdiagnoses as well.
Mhm.
I just I'm so sorry for that track for him because it sounds like the support that he was getting in your household is like immeasurable for
Mhm.
everything that he went through. Tell me a little bit about the talk that you had on the reel. The last time that you all were a family together, you said it was really, really a beautiful time. It was Labor Day of last year,
Mhm.
2023.
Yep. Yeah, we were so it's kind of a fun story. My parents love to surprise each other like over the years for Christmases, birthdays, kind of whatever. And they've done it to us as kids. Like we've been surprised with trips and,
Yeah.
we went on a cruise when we were real little and
Yeah.
our grandparents just happened to show up on the cruise ship. And like we go
Aw.
up, like I'm like, why the heck are we knocking on this door? And then they pop out and it was great. Like it was super cool. So my parents love to surprise each other.
Mhm.
And my mom is my dad's 50th birthday party. So my mom flew me and my brother and all our close friends and family out there and we
Mhm.
just got a VRBO for the weekend. And just told my dad, "Oh, we're just going out there for vacation. Like it's a long weekend, so let's go."
Yeah.
Um, and he was like, "All right, whatever." And he knew he was going to be seeing one person. He had this buddy from college
Okay.
that lives in Phoenix. His name is Christian, and he went out. He's like, "Oh, I'm excited. We'll go see Christian. Whatever." Well, Christian picks him up from the airport, drives him to the house, and everybody kind of jumps out and surprises him. And
Aw.
it was kind of perfect because everybody kept coming in after that. It was like
Aw.
staggered, like hourly, kind of throughout the weekend, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Because the surprise, he was like, "Oh, who's coming next?" Which was pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Door number 2, who's behind that
Exactly,
one?
exactly, and it was really cool to see that. But as you said, it was kind of the last time with Casey. We didn't know it at the time, obviously, but
Mhm.
it was really cool spending that time with Casey because for like I said, for a lot of his life, he really struggled in social situations, especially
Mhm.
with people that he wasn't comfortable with. But
Yeah.
these are people who we had grown up with and, grown to be comfortable with. So we
Yeah.
got to see Casey, who and he ended up being the life of the party. Everybody was
Oh,
loving kind of just hanging out with him. And it was so cool to see Casey just, everybody said, look happy for once.
okay.
Um, I mean, growing up, there's all these pictures of him and he's smiling, he's smiling, he's smiling. And then it just stops. All the pictures that we have after that, there's no more smiles.
Oh, wow.
And it was cool to see him that weekend just look really happy,
Yeah.
be the life of the party. And I mean, as I said, like it's the last conversation I ever got to have with him. Last time I got to see him. Same goes for my parents.
Yeah.
For all of our family and friends that were there, and everybody knew like what it meant once everything happened, what that
Yeah.
weekend really meant.
Yeah.
Once everything happened, there was so much more value placed on that weekend after that. So
Yeah, that value of connection and that like you said, seeing him happy. That's
mhm,
interesting that you talk about pictures of him smiling and smiling and smiling, and then all of a sudden it just stops.
mhm.
And how old was he when you think that all happened?
12, 13,
Mhm.
around there. He didn't like the way that his teeth looked in
Yeah.
pictures or something was his reason. I don't
Well, that's
I
a
don't know
hard
what the
age.
whole reason is. Yeah.
12 and
So
13 for boys and girls is very
it's tough.
challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sucked. Yeah, absolutely. Amen. Amen. Yeah. And I think that if you compound anything extra on top of that, you're brewing a perfect storm, basically.
Mhm.
Yeah. Um, I know that you are super close with your relationship with Christ, and your faith is such a strong piece of your journey and a strong
Mhm.
piece of your story. Tell me a little bit about how that has been there for you and what that means to you at this point, because this all happened for you 6 months ago. You're
Yeah.
still in the healing process in a pretty deep space.
Yeah. So I mean, we grew up in church.
Mhm.
Parents were is very very adamant about getting us in church on Sunday, and we do all the youth groups and stuff, everything like that. We were in it. When I was 14, we are driving home from one of my volleyball tournaments, and my brother goes, "So are we going to talk about it?" And I'm like, "Talk about what?" Well, in that sense, I found out that my parents had given up another child for adoption before I was born. Um,
Mm,
and Casey knew about it because Casey was so good at snooping. I mean, he knew what
yeah.
all of his Christmas presents were way early. But that being said, I have a great relationship with my sister now, but
Okay.
that's kind of something that we're trying to still figure out what
Yeah,
that looks like
absolutely.
now that everything's happened.
Hmm.
Um, but on this car ride, Casey figured it out before I did, so we're going to talk about it. Found out
Hmm.
we had a sister. Going after that, my brother was obviously very upset. I mean, I was upset too, but it really affected him. He declared himself an atheist to hurt my mom,
Wow.
and it worked. We didn't go to church for probably 2 years. They didn't
Wow.
go to church for even longer after that. Um,
Oh,
and it was rough. I did not have a good relationship with God through most of high school, most of college, really.
mhm,
Um, I call myself a Christian. I
mhm.
start I once I could drive myself, I started going to church again, but I
Okay.
wasn't really acting like a Christian should. It's to go to Sunday, better to ask for forgiveness than anything else, I guess.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's not how I should have been living. And when you are choosing to listen to God only when you want to listen to God, then who's really the Lord of your life at that point? You
It's a
are.
great point. Mhm.
So I spent a lot of my time, especially in college, kind of doing whatever I felt like I wanted to do. I don't
Mhm.
drink, I don't party, but it was just it was not healthy. And
Yeah.
going from my junior to senior year, I was in a relationship for all of my junior year
Mhm.
that was going nowhere. And it was just, I stayed in it because it was easy and it
Yeah.
wasn't fair to that person. It wasn't fair to me. And I was like, I need to change something because I keep saying that I want to have a relationship with God, but I'm not doing anything about it.
Yeah.
So I applied for a job as a counselor in a Christian camp. It's called Kanakuk in Branson,
Mhm.
Missouri. And the camp changed my life. And as I'm walking through it, like I'm spending time in the Word every single day, and I'm meeting these counselors that still pour into me, and I,
Yeah.
pour into them, and that's incredibly beneficial. Working with kids, ministering to them, it will change your life. And it
Yeah.
did. It changed mine. It changed my perspective. It changed how I decided to live after that.
Mhm.
Coming out of camp, still spending time in the Word every single day, every single day, every single day. Then we get the call in the middle of October that Casey had most likely passed away. We all fly out there. It's confirmed that he's passed away.
Mhm.
And, you know, I really struggled with that as
Sure.
as most probably would.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
I struggled with that because I was like, God, I'm at the closest point in my relationship with you that I've ever been. Ever.
Mhm.
It's not even close. And now is when you decide to
Mm.
finally take Casey after all of the attempts. Why put us through all those attempts?
Yeah.
Like what was the point of that if if
Yeah.
if eventually it was just going to happen anyways? Why didn't you just take him the first time instead of
Mhm.
putting us through this so many times? And the response from God was, well, you're coming to me now, aren't you? Like you would not have come to me if it had happened the first time or the second time. Like
Wow.
it would have been why would I go to a God who could have allowed something like that to happen
Right.
for
Right.
help? But
Right.
instead it was, Nick, I know the plans that I have for you. He knew I was going to work at the camp long before I did. Build
Right.
the relationship with God to where I could lean on him through this.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's been able to help me to be able to actually do something positive with Casey's death.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
so I
I
long,
totally.
long, long answer for a not very
No,
long
no.
question.
That's amazing. I think that it's everything is extremely valuable, what you just said. Extremely relatable for people, and I think you put it in a really great a great way that we all life is hard, all right? Like, stuff that we go through is not always easy, but, transcendence is that the hard stuff doesn't last. The good stuff doesn't last. It's just where you fall and what you do with those things and where you put your energy and your perspective and your belief and what helps you get through the good times and the bad times. And timing. Yeah, that timing for you. I love how you explained that because you're right. Like, who would have said at the point where you were that if you had not have sought that out and became that camp counselor? Yeah, shout out Branson, Missouri. Woohoo, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go. Yeah. I mean, who's to say? Yeah, you are so correct. You would not have gotten to a point where you would have felt like, oh yes, this is what I'd like to do. This is what I'm going to do. This is going to make me feel better. You that angry place, that grieving place. And obviously there's grief that goes along with what you're dealing with. And I know another thing you talked about in your reel on Instagram was dealing with the finality of your brother's passing, and that you feel like that's going to be a piece for you for a very long time, which no doubt there will always be that hole that is left in your life and in your parents' lives and the people, everyone that surrounded him and that loved him. So talk to me a little bit about your process through healing at this point and where you are on that grieving track and where you are on that path.
Yeah. Not entirely sure where I'm at on it. I
Mhm.
know I'm trying to make the most of it.
Mhm.
It's not, I mean, we spent our time afterwards with, you know, I spent my time with our family. We ended up, my dad's boss is from Portland, Oregon, where Casey died. And,
Mhm.
we live in Kansas City, but he was trying to get a truck across country. So he just bought us a truck for us to drive down
Yeah.
because flights were ridiculously expensive. So he bought us a truck. We drove it to Kansas City. Then the company took it from there. But,
Yeah.
very, very helpful in that. But getting to spend that time was obviously very valuable with my
Mhm.
family. I had 14-hour drive from home from my college,
Yeah.
and then from literally Oregon to Kansas City. That was a 24-hour drive. Obviously,
Wow.
flights make it a little bit easier and usually fly
Right.
places, but it's not like we're very close. So the time that I do get to spend with my family is very valuable to me.
Mhm.
And I'm not entirely sure where I'm at on the grieving scale.
Mhm.
Um, and definitely not a competition. My
Mm.
parents are definitely behind me in
Yeah.
wherever that is. It's different losing a child than it is losing a
Sure.
brother, and I understand
Mhm.
that. Um,
Absolutely.
so trying to do my best to kind of make the most of it that I can. And like you had said, the finality is something that I'll always struggle with
Yeah.
because you know it's not like me and my brother had a whole lot of face to face time after I came to college. But
Right.
we would call and we text and whatever,
Yeah.
whenever he had a problem, I was who he went to because he he just didn't like to talk to my parents about his problems. So
Yeah.
he'd come to me.
You're tight. You're
Yeah,
brothers.
it's
Yeah.
different. It's different for sure. I mean, your parents always tell you like your sibling's going to be your best friend when you grow up, and obviously that's a lot more believable once you grow
Yeah.
up than it
Yeah.
is when you're really
Yeah.
little.
When you're little and
But
you're arguing and your sibling
exactly, yeah.
rivalry and all the things. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I
Absolutely.
mean, I was that person for him,
Mhm.
and he doesn't. There's no more texts or calls that I'm getting, obviously.
Mhm.
So, but just the idea that that's not going to happen for the rest of my life is
Yeah.
something I don't think I can really wrap my head around, because it doesn't. It just doesn't feel real a lot of the time. I guess
Yeah.
if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
That makes complete sense. That 125,000% sense. Yes, absolutely. I do say a little bit ago, you did say that you're trying to do um, good from this
Mhm.
horrendous situation and this tragedy that has come upon your whole family. Tell me a little bit about what prompted you to do the suicide awareness, the tournament, because you pull that
Yeah, it
together with.
was it was a it was just a game, but yeah. So the idea behind it was I also have a teammate who his little cousin died by suicide a year ago, and
Mm,
she was 10 or 12. I think she was 12 actually. I got that wrong,
ugh,
but 12 years old, which is like even crazier than my brother who was 20 at the
yeah,
time.
yeah.
And his mom is, an hour and a half from campus. And it was her sister that, you know, their daughter. So
Yeah.
my teammate's mom's niece, who it was
Yeah.
essentially. And she was like, I think this is something that we should, turn into something good.
Right.
And me and my mom and her kind of worked on it as best as we could. My mom reached out to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, or AFSP.
Yeah.
They sent a bunch of resources, materials to the school that we were able to hand out, which is really
Right.
cool. There's a bunch of posters that we still have hanging up around the school.
Hmm.
Uh, but you know, the goal was to be able to talk about it. So that
Hmm.
way other people feel more comfortable talking about it whenever
Yeah.
they're having those things. So I spoke at our school's chapel. We're a Christian school. Spoke at our school's chapel about it. Spoke at the game about it, before the game. And one thing the goal was always, I'm not talking about this for pity. I'm talking about this because other people need to understand that it's real.
Yes. Yes.
And, you know, from there, how can we help? How can we change it so that way you're not going through it, your friend's not going through it? I'm not
Mhm.
saying they're not going through the feelings of it. I'm saying I don't want you going through with the action of it.
Right.
Like,
Right.
how can we keep you from going through the action of it? Because it's a
Right.
permanent problem or a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Oh, yeah.
And so, how can we stop that from happening? How can we help you to get through whatever it is that's causing you to have those feelings?
Yeah.
And we can't help. I mean, number one, I don't have the resources to be able to help. I am
Yeah.
able to provide those resources. But
Hmm.
number two, I can't help if I don't know what's going on,
For
just
sure.
as nobody else can help if they don't know what's going on.
Yeah. It's being
So,
transparent and feeling like it's okay
mhm,
to talk about it. It's okay to let someone know that you're struggling, that you're having a hard time, that this is something you're considering. And it's also being aware of those people in your lives that may not be sending those verbal signs to you,
mhm,
like, and those things that you knew about your brother and the love and the support that you were providing him. There are a lot of people that don't get that, that feel that unworthiness and
mhm.
that inability to be able to have a conversation about it. So yes, the awareness piece is such a big deal. It's such a big deal. Um, how what are your plans to honor your brother's spirit? Because I feel like there's just fire inside of you to really touch people's lives in a way that um, they can understand, they can know that they're loved, they can know that they're cared for, they can know that they are worthy of acceptance, of getting help, of being taken care of, and of being understood and being heard. So tell me a
Mhm.
little bit about what you might see yourself doing in the future.
I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing in the future. I know that stories hold a lot of power, and it's been made very clear to me, over these past, few weeks, few months, that I'm supposed to be doing something with my brother's story. That I'm supposed to be doing something with, you know, how I can speak.
Yeah.
It's a gift that I've been given. Don't get nervous in front of other people. I might say a lot or like a lot, but I'm able to convey whatever I'm trying to get across decently well.
Mhm.
And stories hold an incredible amount of power.
Yeah.
So, like you said, honoring my brother's spirit and his story is really important, because if his story can change even just one other person's life, then again, it's worth it.
Yes.
And the unique thing is that that's not on me to do,
Mhm.
because I don't have the ability to do anything on my own. God gives me the ability to do it well.
Right.
Um, and like I said, I'm not taking any credit for what happened. Like,
Right.
everything that has happened since since my brother's suicide, and the event that we've planned, and the interviews, news stations, this
Mhm.
podcast, like,
Mhm.
everything that's happening is nothing that I would be able to do. like there's
Yeah.
a reason that this is all happening, and I'm still trying to figure out what that might be.
Yeah.
Um, but again, that's all God. So
Yeah. Amen. Can I get an amen mic drop right
yeah.
there? Because it's true. And I feel like anyone listening to this or watching the video of our conversation will inherently know that this is nothing to do with you. And it is everything to do with sharing that story of your brother and share it. I love that you said stories have power. You know, they have sharing your story, sharing your vulnerability, sharing those pieces of yourself really are catalysts for shift for people in their lives and allow people to know that it's okay. It's okay to not be okay. You know, it's okay to struggle.
Yeah.
It's what we choose to do with it when we're in the thick of it. And if we feel like we can feasibly step out and ask for what it is that we need. And then as a family member and as a loved one or as a friend, being able to support that individual and knowing that you're doing what you can, but that you're not ultimately responsible for the other person's actions, but that you also know that you're doing everything you can as a person to just be a witness to them, to their story, to their struggle. And yeah, being there for them for
Mhm.
sure. Yeah. Man, I'm so, so, so glad that you are so open to the conversation and so thankful for your transparency, for your openness. And I've said it 1,000 times already, for your vulnerability.
Yeah.
It's really something. It's very special. It's very unique. And you're doing big things just by being who you are. So
Well, I
thank you,
appreciate
Nick.
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
it means a lot.
absolutely. Well, on the horizon for you is graduation.
Hmm.
That's coming right up.
It's
College
pretty
graduation.
crazy. Time
God,
flies.
golly. You have been a sports phenom at that school. You're the team captain and the libero. So people that are volleyball people will know what a libero is, but a lot of people don't know what that libero is. It's the person that wears the different colored jersey and that like digs all those balls and is flying all over the court and is very talented at what they do. So, tell me a little bit about how sport has helped you get through this piece as well for you.
Yeah. So when everything happened, I mean, right away I had to tell my professors that I was not going to be in class for a few weeks. I didn't know when I was going to return. I had told
Mhm.
my coaches, "Hey, look, this is what's going on. Do with that as you will. I won't
Yeah.
be here," and they were very understanding of that. But I didn't really tell any of my classmates, any other students. I told my roommate because I was like, "I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks, so don't
Yeah.
like think it's weird."
Yeah.
But I didn't tell any other students. And I'm sure my teammates kind of figured out eventually. Um, like before I got back, I'm sure my teammates had figured out from somebody along the
Mhm.
line
Yeah.
that was kind of what was going on. But I mean, I got messages while I was out in Oregon from every single one of my teammates, and I mean, I
Mhm.
didn't respond. I wasn't ready to respond at the time.
Right.
There's not much I remember
Mhm.
from that. It's kind of more pushed away.
Yeah.
Um, but they're very helpful in kind of helping me readjust when I got back to school and back to practice. And obviously that first practice was really weird, and they had gone 2 weeks without the team captain being there,
Yeah.
so that's a unique dynamic to kind of figure out. And after the first practice I was like, for those of you who don't know, this is what happened.
Yeah.
um, I'm good with where I'm at, like it's okay,
Mhm.
but we're gonna continue kind of a little bit more normally. And I was able to. I'm a huddle leader for FCA here, um,
Yay.
so I was able to kind of talk to the other huddle leaders about what was going on,
Yeah.
and explain that this in my life is you know a big turning point, as it probably should be.
Yeah.
And my teammates, my classmates, other students, other FCA leaders, my teachers, my coaches,
Mhm.
they were great in helping me to kind of readjust when I got back. And I think the good thing about being at a Christian school is that like they can encourage the fact that, oh, hey, we are praying for you. And
Yeah.
I enjoy the fact that our teachers do care about us in that way. And I'm not saying other teachers at, public schools don't
Yeah.
pray for
Yeah.
their students. It's just not, as encouraged. It's not,
For sure.
something that's talked about a whole lot. And the
Hmm.
power of prayer is very strong. So
It's very profound. Yeah. It moves mountains for sure. Yeah. Well, as you face graduation, I want to say congratulations on that accomplishment because that's a big deal. Congratulations on 4 full years of playing volleyball collegiately. That's another amazingly huge accomplishment. So bravo to you. And congratulations on being valedictorian of your class. So much going on for you. It's amazing. And again, thank you for your transparency. Thank you for being so genuine and for laying out your story originally so that others could hear it and people would know that this is an important topic. The silent epidemic is such an important topic for us to be having this conversation about, for others to be aware of, for those that may be struggling to know that there are people out there that do care and that you are worthy of that self-love, that acceptance, and those connections with other people. Amen. Mic drop.
Amen.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. Nick, I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day, great rest of your week. And again, thank you from the bottom of my heart for sharing your story with us. I know you're going to go on to do big things with this story, with your story, with your brother Casey's story. So
thank you.
Good for
I
you.
appreciate that.
Absolutely. All right. Have a great rest of your day.
You as well.
Thank you. Thanks so much for tuning in today, guys. If you have an idea for an interview or you would like to share your own story, I would love to hear from you. Send me a message at dawn@thesoulgoals.com. If you enjoyed today's podcast, I'd love for you to leave a review and to consider following and subscribing to the show. With weekly releases, there is always another interesting story to be heard. I do hope that today's guests and their words have helped to bring some extra light to your day and encouraged you to find a deeper space of your very own soul goals. Until next time, friends, remember that everyone has a story and every story matters.